Hi, and welcome to Chapter 1. Today, Chapter 1, we are going to read Mother's Day Murder. Chapter 1. Don't I know you? It was the first thing I'd heard before I'd been able to take a sip of the steamy hot cup of coffee I'd gotten from Brewing Beans, the local coffee shop here in Holiday Junction. I'd not even gotten the toe of my shoe on the first step of the trolley before I heard the familiar voice. You, the trolley driver shook her finger at me. Yes, I'm the new reporter for the Junction Journal, I proudly stated, talking about the local newspaper in Holiday Junction. No, no, no. The visor she wore on her head was blinking with lights. Of course it did. Everything in Holiday Junction was either lit up, glittered, sparkled, or shined. And if it didn't, the residents of the small town made sure it did somehow. It's me! She took her hand off the trolley wheel. Goldie Bennett! My eyes narrowed as I looked at her, trying to recall any sort of memory, but I was pulling a blank. You know, Joey Chance's and Izzy's grandmother, she said, like I should know these people. Duh! Her mouth was open. From the airplane, we were seatmates. Oh, the horrible memory popped into my head. Yeah, I'm sorry. I held up the cup of Joe. It's still a little early. It's 10 o'clock, she told me like she didn't believe my excuse. Different strokes for different folks, she muttered and put her hand back on the handle before she said, Well, are you riding or not? Well, yes, I took the last step onto the trolley, barely making it inside before she ripped the door shut, nearly catching my heel, which would have hurt if it did get caught since I was wearing flip flops. I eased down careful not to spill my coffee in the seat next to Goldie and put my briefcase in my lap. Well, aren't you going to ask about Joey, Chance, and Lizzie? Goldie asked out of the side of her mouth as the trolley rattled down Main Street before it hung a left down Peppermint Court. A row of really cute cottage style houses that not only had the feeling of living in the city, but also had a nice view of the dunes and sliver of the seaside. How are your grandchildren? I was having a deja vu moment all over again from the first time that I had met Goldie. My hands started to tremble just thinking about it. I mean, no, she wasn't terrible to sit by now that I knew who she was and now what had come after. But of course, I was in a different mindset when I stepped on the airplane that morning. I thought I was headed to my dream job in California as a big time reporter for a national news station. Little did I know when I sat down next to Goldie, I would excuse myself to get away from looking at the photos of her grandchildren to go to the bathroom. I had to be in the zone for the big shot, the big time that I was facing. But when I found a dead body in the airplane's bathroom, my life took a turn that I never saw coming. Just like this morning. I never in a million years thought I'd see Goldie again. At least she didn't ask me about the body, or worse, seen all the social media memes that had been created of me after I'd gotten the brilliant, well, not so brilliant idea to go live to show off my reporting skills since I was the only reporter in the lockdown airport. Reporter 101 tip: if you do go live on the spot, make sure that your eye makeup hasn't bled down your face, creating a stream of black tears. Not a good look viewers want to see. Oh, well, you know, we're in full swing of T-ball. Lizzie, woo-wee, that Lizzie. She can rock a pink tutu better than any of them dancers at the Grove and Go. She whipped the trolley down the back alley before she took a right back on Main Street so we could head to the opposite direction. Elvin isn't happy with her going down there because he said Trisha Lustig don't need all that money, she tissed. You know, they've got that Lustig Spring everyone goes on and on about. Lustig Spring? I wondered. The trolley came to an abrupt stop. Goldie leaned to the right and grabbed the handle, pulling the trolley door open. You're stopped. Her chin swung over her right shoulder and she looked at me. Already? I looked up and saw we were already at the offices of the Junction Journal. I stood up about to take those steps off the trolley. I didn't know I told you where to stop. Now, Violet, she hissed again, only a little louder this time. Everyone knows who you are at the Junction Journal. They can't say that they really know you like I do. I stood on the side of the road, staring back at her, wondering exactly what she had meant. She slammed the trolley door shut and took off, heading to the next stop. After I stepped off the trolley and watched as it pulled away, I shook my head along with any notion what Goldie had just insinuated about my reputation in this town. So I could do the job I'd stayed in Holiday Junction to do, a reporter for the Junction Journal. In truth, there were two elder sisters, Marge and Louise, who owned the Junction Journal. And from what I've learned over the past couple of months since making Holiday Junction my home, they wanted to get rid of the paper and no one in their family wanted the old dying rag. Me, I was a journalist. It was in my veins. And though my true longing was to be a big-time television reporter, I knew I could be satisfied with owning and operating my own newspaper for the time being. Things in the industry had changed so much and so fast, there was no better way to learn than to jump feet first. And that's just what I did. When the sisters had offered me a job since I'd found myself without one due to the dead body or two, honestly, I didn't have a better offer. I told myself then I'd look around and take my time while I stayed in Holiday Junction instead of tucking my tail and admitting failure by going back home to Kentucky. It'd been 2 months, and here I stood outside of a practically dilapidated seaside house I'd talked Rhett Strickland into letting the Junction Journal lease, since the office was in his aunt's home. It was hard to sell for aunts to buy my reasoning to move the paper, but when I told them how much it would make an easier transition when they did go to sell the Junction Journal, and the fact I'd be working all hours of the night since I had nothing better to do, I didn't want to keep them up all night. Plus, I wasn't comfortable coming and going from someone's actual home when I did go to work. Rhett was an altogether different sale. He didn't seem to want to rent the place. He said he'd loan it for free because it needed a lot of work and he could do most of it, even though he was coming up on his busy season as the Holiday Junction Airport, where he worked as the one and only security guard to the one-room building airport. And by season, I meant the flurry of holidays around the summertime. Mother's Day, Father's Day, 4th of July were just a few to name. And the major ones I'd seen on the town council docket for the upcoming issue where I needed to report on them. That also meant I wasn't going to be able to go home for Mother's Day, which left Millie K. Reinhammer, my mama, in a bit of a tizzy, as we'd say in the South. Toto, we ain't in the South. I shoved the key into the lock of the front door of the house and did my best impression of Dorothy from The Wizard of Oz. Nope, we're in the middle of nowhere, USA. I stepped into the house with my hand on the door handle. I pushed to look over the seaside laying out in front of me. The water shimmered with each slow passing wave and glistened with the little twinkle lights as the sun hit it perfectly. I giggled at just how different my life was now that I had moved away from home where I was surrounded by mountains. Holiday Junction was like no other town I'd ever seen or known in the United States. There were literally 4 types of terrain in this small town. There was the seaside, the mountainside, the countryside, and town. It was definitely a place that filled my creative well, which actually was what gave me the peace during this transition of life. The seaside gave way to the small beach area and a long concrete sidewalk big enough for the streetcars vendors that had erected since the temperatures had gotten warmer. There were also shops where tourists loved to visit, not to mention the cute lighthouse. My phone chirped in my journalist bag. Time to work. I shut the door and headed inside to the one and only room that was actually complete with a desk and view of the sea. I found myself many times over the last month staring out, coming up with all sorts of ideas for the Junction Journal and how I could save it. Time would tell. I put my bag on top of the old desk the sisters had let Rhett bring over for me to work and opened the zipper where I kept my phone tucked in one of the inside pockets. My brow nodded. What did Vern McKenna want? I questioned, since I had no business with him other than him being the merrymaker, which no one knew about that secret. The merrymaker was a unique undercover job in Holiday Junction. I should have even known he was the merrymaker, and I shouldn't have known he was the merrymaker. And I'd like to think it was my journalist instinct that uncovered this little secret, but it wasn't. He had ended up telling me due to the fact that I had done my own investigation into a murder a couple of months ago and pointed to him as a possible suspect. Boy, was I wrong. Vern had an alibi, being the secret merrymaker. Holiday Junction loved holidays, and the town went all out for every single one. Full parade, beauty queen, festival, and all. It was the merrymaker's job to secretly name where the big festival finale party would take place. There was a large sign for each holiday, and wherever the sign was posted, that's where the final party was located. For instance, the first holiday I had the pleasure of spending in Holiday Junction was St. Patrick's Day. A huge wooden leprechaun showed up at the end of Rhett Strickland Street one night. No one knows how the merrymaker does it, but somehow the merrymaker, Vern in this case, comes up with the location and put the leprechaun without anyone in the community ever noticing. Or maybe they just don't act like they don't notice. But once the sign was up for that particular holiday, that was the area where the town folks in the particular area came up with the final send-off for that holiday. And with Mother's Day approaching, I wondered if Vern was calling to ask me how I was going to cover the merrymaker, or if I was going to spill the beans that he was the merrymaker in the Junction Journal. My lips were sealed. I wasn't telling a soul Vern was the one who had the ability to sprinkle joy around for the holidays. Instead of checking the text, I would wait until after I got some research done about that lusted spring Goldie had mentioned. It had gotten my attention and I'd yet heard of it. There were many things to explore in Holiday Junction, and I knew I'd not even scratched the surface of things to do. But the lustig spring and the reason for Goldie's husband not wanting little Lizzie to take dance lessons from Trisha Lustig at the Groove and Go really had sparked my gut, which told me investigate. I put the phone down and got my laptop, paper, and pen out before I sat down. The first thing Rhett did was install internet for me, since we'd recently taken the paper online where the residents could get their daily news. Things important to them like the daily lunch special at the Freedom Diner, today's fresh coffee selection at Brewing Beans, any birth announcements, death notices, and photo opportunities with Mayor Paisley, who just so happened to be a Boston Terrier dog. She was the most sought after celebrity here in Holiday Junction, and since I currently resided at the Jubilee Inn where Mayor Paisley kept office, I was blessed enough with the opportunity to get to know her full schedule. Today, Mayor Paisley will be sitting for photos at noon. Before her 1 p.m. nap, I tapped on the computer to update the online Today section before I moved to the sponsored by part to update. Be sure to head on over to Emily's Treasures. Tell Emily you saw this in today's paper. I tapped on the computer. The cell phone rang, taking my attention for the moment. I continued to finish so I wouldn't lose my train of thought. You will get 10% off your purchase, I typed. The phone rang again. Good morning, Vern, I answered without looking. I'm sorry I haven't called you back. I was a little late getting to the office. What did you need to see me about? Vern, Mama's voice questioned. My stomach dropped. I'd been so careful screening my calls from her over the last couple of days, I didn't even think of looking down at the phone to see who was calling. Why is he texting you? There was no room in her voice. I told your daddy there was going to be some pervert out there trying to hit on you, and you need to come home where you have family and friends who love you. Look out for you when some man tries to hit on you, texting you at all hours of the day and night. Mama always assumed the worst when it came to me and taking care of myself. Mama, I wish you'd go see Beth Hager. She'd love to have you on the prayer team. Mama had nothing better to do now that I was gone. I was their one and only child, and she made it her job to tell everybody back home in our hometown where I was going to be, what channel I was on, and made sure everyone had tuned into my local broadcast when I lived there. And now that I didn't live there anymore, she had to keep tabs on me even more. She spent the better part of her waking day calling me, texting me, and emailing me when she couldn't reach me the first 2 ways. I don't want to be in no prayer meeting. I've got my own prayers to worry about than to mix it up with other people's problems, Mama sounded out of breath. Are you sure you won't be coming home for Mother's Day? Mama, you know I love you so much and I miss you. I wish we were together, but I simply can't be home. I'm under a huge deadline. I typed in Lustig Spring into the Google search engine while Mama talked, and I was surprised at all the hits it had. Mama, I promise I'll call you back, or I'll come home before summer ends. There were some birds chirping in the background, and I wondered if she was on a hike in the Daniel Boone National Forest, my hometown. My stomach clenched after hearing the familiar sounds of home. Summer ends, Mama cried out. That's just not soon enough, Violet Rainheimer. I'm your one and only Mama, and one day you'll regret this. Not now, Mama. I hated when she used her Southern Mama guilt on me. You are the one who taught me to follow my dreams, I told her. I didn't mean for you to follow it right on out of town, she cried out. I pushed myself back in the chair and got up. All the information I was about to dive into about the Lustig Spring made me excited. I knew there was a story there where I wanted to visit, which was going to require all of my time. This meant I needed to get off the phone with Mama. Underneath the bench, Eddie. You also taught me to be the independent woman with my own job, career, and future. I walked to the back of the office, which was used to be in the kitchen, and looked over the landscape where the mountain stood tall in the distance. There was a knock on the office door. I jerked back to look over my shoulder, wishing I had a glass door to see who was on the other side. Mama, I've got to go. I promise I'll call you back. I clicked off as Mama was saying something. I walked back to the front door. I sure hope it's not Marjorie Louise, I said under my breath, since I'd yet to have anything prepared for them this morning. You've got this, I told myself with confidence, knowing it was something my Mama would have told me. I rolled my shoulders back and smiled as I flung the door open. Remember how you just said I taught you to be independent? Mama stood on the other side. The sound of waves lapped behind her. I'm taking my own advice. Your daddy and I are getting divorced. I didn't know what I was shocked most about. Mama standing right here in front of me, or her news about my parents' future. Chapter 1 and 2 of Mother's Day Murder.